The story making the rounds right now claims that Prince Harry is privately furious with Meghan Markle over a social media post showing images from his military service in Afghanistan, suggesting it was some kind of calculated political swipe at Donald Trump. But when you slow this narrative down and actually look at the facts, the framing starts to fall apart. What we're really seeing is yet another attempt to pit Harry and Meghan against each other, to turn a moment of shared values into a tale of marital discord, and to repackage Harry's lived experience as a political weapon rather than what it has always been, a deeply personal history of service, sacrifice and loss. Harry's response to Donald Trump's remarks about British troops did not come from nowhere. Trump's comments dismissing NATO forces in Afghanistan as staying a little off the front lines and claiming the US never needed them were bound to provoke outrage. They weren't just historically inaccurate, they were profoundly disrespectful to thousands of service members from allied nations who fought, were injured and died alongside American troops. Harry's rebuttal was measured, grounded and human. He didn't posture. He didn't insult. He spoke as someone who had been there, who had lost friends, and whose life was shaped by that experience. I served there. I made lifelong friends there, and I lost friends there. Thousands of lives were changed forever. That isn't political grandstanding. That is testimony. That is a veteran speaking about reality. Against that backdrop, Meghan sharing images of Harry during his service and from the Invictus Games looks far less like a political provocation and far more like solidarity. Those images weren't new. They weren't shocking. They weren't inflammatory. They were visual reminders of the very sacrifices Harry was talking about, and of the wounded veterans he continues to support through Invictus, a project that has always been explicitly non-partisan and humanitarian. Yet the claim being pushed is that Harry was somehow angry with Meghan for amplifying the moment. Anonymous insiders suggest he felt exposed, worried, even furious. But this narrative depends entirely on unnamed sources interpreting Harry's feelings for him, while ignoring everything we know about how Harry and Meghan actually operate as a couple. This is the same couple who have repeatedly emphasized that they work as a team, that they discuss decisions together, and that they are acutely aware of the risks of public misinterpretation. Meghan is not some rogue actor impulsively dragging Harry into controversy. She has spent years being hyper-aware of how every action will be scrutinized, twisted, and weaponized against them. To suggest she casually posted something without considering its implications doesn't align with reality. It's also worth asking, why is Meghan always framed as the instigator? Why is she so often portrayed as manipulating Harry's past, his pain, or his service for her own ends? This framing relies on an outdated sexist trope, the idea that Meghan is controlling, calculating, and politically provocative, while Harry is passive or endangered. It strips Harry of agency and infantilizes him while simultaneously demonizing Meghan. Harry has never shied away from talking about his military service when he feels it's being misrepresented. He wrote about it in Spare. He has spoken about it in interviews. He has tied it directly to his advocacy for veterans' mental health. If he truly believed Meghan's post crossed a line, we would expect to see some sign of that distance, correction, or clarification. Instead, what we see publicly is alignment. Silence where there is nothing to correct. Continuity, not conflict. The idea that Meghan's post was a pointed political dig also collapses under scrutiny. She did not mention Trump. She did not reference American politics. She did not attach commentary attacking anyone. The political interpretation is being projected onto the images by commentators eager to create drama. Supporting a veteran spouse and highlighting military service does not automatically equate to partisan signalling, unless one is determined to see it that way. Another angle being pushed is that Harry is supposedly terrified of provoking Trump because of ongoing scrutiny around his US visa application, particularly in light of his admissions about past drug use in Spare. This concern is framed as if Harry is living in constant fear that any public statement could jeopardize his immigration status. But again, context matters. Harry did not volunteer those admissions under duress. He chose transparency. He has already faced intense public and political scrutiny over those revelations, and no finding has been made against him. Immigration processes are governed by law, not presidential grudges or social media posts. The notion that a photo of Harry in a helicopter could suddenly endanger his legal status is speculative at best and fear-mongering at worst. It also ignores the reality that Harry has been outspoken about issues far more sensitive than this: media ethics, institutional racism, trauma and accountability, without retreating into silence. He has never suggested that he intends to muzzle himself to avoid controversy, especially when it comes to defending the dignity of those he served alongside. Then there's the suggestion that Harry wants to keep the focus on soldiers and their families, while Meghan is allegedly dragging his service into a culture war moment. But that framing assumes Meghan's post somehow detracts from soldiers and families, when in fact it centres them. The Invictus Games exist precisely to keep the focus on wounded service members and their recovery. Sharing imagery from Invictus alongside Harry's service history reinforces continuity, service, sacrifice, and lifelong responsibility to fellow veterans. If anything, Meghan's post underscores that Harry's military past is not a prop, not a closed chapter, and not something to be dismissed by flippant political commentary. It is a living part of his identity, one that continues to inform his work and values. It's also important to remember that Meghan has consistently supported military families and veterans since joining the royal family and after leaving it. She has visited military charities, worked with families of the fallen, and shown up repeatedly in spaces where support is needed, but cameras are scarce. This is not new behaviour, and it's not opportunistic. The claim that Harry is urging caution behind the scenes may well be true in a general sense. Harry is cautious by nature, especially when it comes to security, legal matters, and media fallout. But caution does not equal anger. Concern does not equal fury. A couple discussing risks does not equate to a rift. What's striking is how quickly some outlets leap from Harry may be aware of risks to Harry is furious with Meghan. That leap says more about the storytellers than it does about the Sussexes. Conflict sells, division sells. A united front does not. Donald Trump's eventual walk back, calling British forces among the greatest of all warriors, further undermines the idea that Meghan's post triggered some dangerous escalation. Trump did not attack Harry. He did not lash out at Meghan. He recalibrated his language, albeit partially and without acknowledging all NATO allies. The feared explosion simply didn't happen. And that brings us to the larger pattern. Over and over again, Harry and Meghan are portrayed as walking on the edge of disaster, supposedly one misstep away from implosion, legal, political, marital. Yet time and again, the catastrophe fails to materialize. What remains instead is a couple continuing their work, raising their children, and speaking out when they believe something matters. Harry's military service is not a vulnerability Meghan exploits. It is a shared source of pride, grief and purpose. Meghan didn't live through Afghanistan the way Harry did, but she lives with the consequences of it, with the trauma he carries, with the friends he lost, with the veterans he remains committed to supporting. When she shares that history, she is not appropriating it. She is standing beside it. The idea that Harry would resent that support misunderstands both of them. Harry has spoken repeatedly about how Meghan encouraged him to seek help, to speak openly, and to reclaim his narrative from institutions and tabloids that distorted it for decades. Why would that suddenly change now? At its core, this story tries to reframe a moment of respect for military sacrifice as reckless political provocation, and to recast a partnership as a power struggle. It asks audiences to believe that Meghan is careless and Harry is powerless. But the evidence, both past and present, points elsewhere. Harry chose to respond to Trump's remarks because they touched something fundamental: respect for those who serve. Meghan chose to visually reinforce that message by honouring his service and the veterans he champions. Those actions are aligned, not at odds. If there is tension here, it's not between Harry and Meghan, it's between truth and sensationalism, between lived experience and manufactured outrage, between a couple asserting their values and a media ecosystem that profits from tearing them apart. And as always, the simplest explanation is often the most accurate. Meghan wasn't dragging Harry into anything. She was standing with him.